desire to create? Where does it come from? And what does it mean? Let's talk about it with musician and author Michael Card on Steve Brown, etc.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome Steve Brown, etc.
Hey, we're so glad you're here. And I say it over and over again and mean it over and over again. You always have a place at our table. And I'm Steve, the aforementioned old white guy. Matthew Porter, our executive producer, is here. Matthew is a drummer, which, if you don't know, is very, very close to being a musician. And our producer, Jinx, is working hard in his little glass booth. Wait, Jinx, you're not in your little glass booth. Where are you?
I am at the beach, but I love y'all so much, I wanted to chime in.
Look at that.
Just rub it in a little bit.
And who's that old guy sitting next to you?
That's another old white guy. That's where I came from. That's my dad. Also a Michael.
Michael, it's good to have you with us. You can get to heaven without grace by spending a week of vacation with your son. And I'm sorry, our video director. Our video director. I'm going to get this straight in a minute. John Myers is in his tech bunker. John says that he never oversleeps. He just gives God more time to give him a vision and creativity. Dr. George Bingham is not here today. He's the head of Key Life, and he's under the weather. He was tested. He doesn't have COVID. But he figures if he plays it right, he can use this for at least a week of sympathy. Mm-hmm. And Kathy Wyatt is the soft, feminine side of the program. Jinx, if you really cared about this show, you wouldn't go on vacation. You would stay here the way Kathy stays here because she loves Jesus. And I just felt like I needed to say that. And
wow.
Listen, Kathy, I don't write these. I just read them. So
yes,
if
you do.
Send letters, send them to Matthew. What?
I said, yes, you do. None of us know where they come from. Well, no, that's not true. We do know where they come from.
The musings of Matthew Porter.
Listen, our guest today is one of our favorite people. He's an award-winning musician and performing artist. He earned his master's degree in biblical studies from Western Kentucky University, and he's authored nearly 30 books. His latest is the InterVarsity Press signature collection edition of his book, which I hold in my nicotine-stained fingers. It's titled Scribbling in the Sand, Christ and Creativity. Michael, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks. It's good to see your face and hear your voice again. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. I'll tell you,
yeah.
I've loved this book because I want to be a musician like you.
Mm-hmm.
And
good luck with that.
Sell millions of CDs and albums and write books that are bestsellers and have people say, "Wow."
I don't think I've ever had a bestseller. My books are rare. They're rare books.
Well, listen, after you're on this program,
yes,
don't worry, you're going to sell millions of copies and
tens of 20s from your mouth to God's ear.
Yeah, that's true. I have contacts, and I would appreciate it if you would send, because of that, 10% of your royalties to Key Life. It would be helpful. I just want you to know that.
George left him.
All kidding aside, God has gifted you. You're the person to write a book on creativity. I still use your commentaries on the Gospels. Those are the best I have ever read.
Wow.
And I might say the most creative and insightful. When you're as old as I am and you've been doing this as long as I have, you very rarely read religious stuff that's new. I mean, It's reworking, but you don't do that. Man, you show me things and take me places that I've never gone before. And I'm not selling those books, though you can get them at a good bookseller. We're talking about creativity. What in the world is that?
Well, it's all sorts of things. I think it's part of God's image in us. I think if we reflect his image, we create with a small c. He creates with a big C out of nothing. We don't do that. I think it's a response to him. I think it's one of the best ways to show we love him is to be creative. But my definition of creativity involves finding ways to connect with people and love people well and wash their feet and not just painting pictures and writing songs. I think that's part of it, but it's a very small part that's been vastly overrated.
Yeah. When you sat down to do this book, was it a part of the course you were teaching, or the course you taught to students on creativity, did it come out of this book?
It started in a class at Columbia University a long, long time ago, and over time it developed. And then finally, it became a book. And they're reissuing it. You wrote this a number of years ago. Yes, 20 years ago.
Can I be creative?
You are creative. I mean, look at where you're sitting right now. Look at the stuff you come up with, on a regular basis. In fact, to deny that you're creative in some sense is to deny that you're creating God's image. I just think we need to work on our definition of what creativity is and stop making idols out of, creative people.
We do that, don't we?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think we do. I think we have industries that are based on that. And again, there's nothing wrong. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a wonderfully creative person. There's nothing wrong with being a Phil Kagi or a gifted person like a Steve Green or a Buechner or a Walter Brueggemann, these incredibly gifted people. But at the same time, God has made us all creative. And I pray that I can see that creativity and redefine it in a way that helps me to appreciate that part of God's image in everyone.
A part of that, I think, and by the way, I'm going to call you occasionally and say, Michael, you remember what you said on our broadcast about me. Would you repeat it? I'm suicidal and I need some help here. What is Michael, I can't imagine anybody not knowing who you are. I can't imagine anybody or any Christian who hasn't been touched by your music, or Christians who haven't been touched by what you said. And I think that's cool. And it's true. But you may be the most unassuming, laid back, I don't care, a person I know. If I could do what you do, I would want people to kiss my ring, to kneel in front of my altar, to hum my music in front of them, to refer to my books. What happened to you?
Well, you've got to understand, I grew up and I was raised and discipled around some of the most creative people who've ever lived. I mean, one of my big inspirations was Earl Scruggs, the banjo player. Do you know that name?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, Mr. Scruggs was one of my dad was a doctor. He was one of my dad's patients, and his two youngest sons were friends. We had bluegrass bands and played together growing up and that sort of thing. So I grew up musically around those guys. And if you do that, you don't kid yourself about whether you're any good at playing, right? Stevie, my best story is Stevie Scruggs and I are sitting there, eating, we're 12 years old, 10 years old. I spent the night at his house. We're eating Cheerios and watching Bugs Bunny one morning, and John McEwen walks into their living room, who's one of the great musicians in the world. And so I grew up, there was that part of growing up. But then I was discipled by a man named William Lane, who was a Harvard PhD, who spoke 16 languages and wrote several books. He wrote commentaries. Well, if you spend a lot of time with someone like that, you don't kid yourself that you can. The bar was set very high. So this isn't humility. It really is reality.
That is, I didn't expect that. What a great comment about humility. We're talking to Michael Card, and you ought to get this book. It's not what you think. It's a very encouraging book for all of us. We are created in God's image, and a part of that is the gift of creativity that we all have. Even somebody like me who can't sing and screws it up so much, I'm creating an image that people can look at and not follow. Hey, thanks for joining us. We're talking to Michael Card. His new book is actually 20 years old as a part of their 75th anniversary. InterVarsity Press has published special editions of books they consider to be iconic. And one of those is Michael's Scribbling in the Sand, Christ and Creativity. Michael, there's something I got to bring up. I just can't let it sit there.
It is just sitting there.
Sort of looks behind you. There's a skeleton, and that can't be. You wouldn't do something like that. What is that?
Is that a music critic?
Skeleton.
What is it?
That's a guy who gave my first album a really bad review. No, my dad was a doctor, and I'm such a nerd that skeletal anatomy is kind of a hobby of mine. And so when we homeschooled our kids, I bought a real. It's not a real skeleton, but it's an articulated skeleton from a medical supply house or whatever. It's not a Halloween skeleton. It's a real skeleton.
It's awesome.
And Michael, all the kids had names for him. And
I think that's cool and all, but would you shut that door? It gives me the creeps, man.
That's part of God's creation. I mean, the skeleton. The skeleton.
That dog's
it's amazing.
Not gonna keep the door closed.
It's amazing. I mean, they're called foramen. There are these holes in your skull where nerves and things come through, and it's just the skeleton is just amazing. It's an amazing thing that our hands move the way they move.
Do you want to sell books, or do you want to talk about skeleton?
I don't mind that. Okay, let's do this real quick. Okay, wait. See my hand? Can you put one finger down? Yep. See, you can't.
Can't. Well, let me show you. You can't do this.
What's that?
It's called double jointed.
Oh yeah. No, I can't do that. And
I can't do the fingers. So
I wouldn't do it if I could. Well, see, here's the thing. I've got two separate tendons, and most people only have one. So when they do this, both fingers come down. See, Matthew's like that. Yeah, you can do it. There you go. Okay, come on, Jinx. Let's see it. Let's see it. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Come on,
Guys,
John.
Look.
Steve, you're the odd man out.
I know.
he was double jointed.
Yeah.
I want
John
to
can't
talk
do
about
it.
your book. Okay.
Okay.
Michael?
Okay.
We're being
For heaven's
creative.
Let's
sake.
talk about it. Talk
I
about
love it.
anatomy.
So I had a question. The title, the way you frame the whole book,
Yeah.
is an allusion to the moment. I forgot there was 2 beats of him, of Jesus writing in the sand. I wonder why that. Why does that frame this book on creativity, and what does that tell us about God as the creator and an artist?
Well, that moment is a paradigm moment for me. And so many things about that moment contain the ideas that I wanted to express. I mean, I say that moment was unexpected. Creativity is unexpected. And it was obviously creative. It created this space in time, which art does, but it was also irritating, which is one of the things I really love about Jesus. He did this bizarre thing by scribbling in the sand, and everybody got, fairly heated about it, but it shut him up, and he made his point without saying anything, which I think was also pretty cool.
You say something for our viewers and listeners who may not be aware of what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Describe that incident.
Okay.
If you can do it with the beauty with which you did it in the book.
Well, it's in John chapter 8. It's a passage that's hotly debated because it's not in a lot of manuscripts, and it occurs in different manuscripts in different places. In one manuscript, it's even in Luke. And so sometimes there'll be little bars that'll say the earliest manuscripts don't contain John, whatever. And that's a whole other issue. But it's interesting that it was a debated whether this story should even be in the New Testament, in the Gospels. But it's Jesus in the temple, and there's this woman who's been set up by the Pharisees. They want to trap Jesus. There's a whole series of trick questions and trap questions, and he usually answers them with another questions and shuts them all up, which is another really cool way to see his mind work and see how he dealt with people. And I think he still deals with people. I know when I pray, I usually get a question back, and that used to discourage me. But now I feel like I'm really talking to Jesus. That's what he did in the Gospels. He answered questions with questions. But when they're hounding him, pushing him, and whether they should kill this woman or not, stone her to death, he responds by getting down on his haunches and writing in the sand. And John doesn't tell us what he wrote, which can be very frustrating. I would love to imagine, what he was writing, but John thinks we don't need to know that. The fact that he did it is the point. And it was, like I said, it was unexpected, and everyone shut up, and there was this space around the silence that was created by what he did. And it was irritating. And all those things, I think, can be part of creativity. I mean, that's part of Jesus' creativity. Jesus doesn't leave any artifacts. He doesn't write any songs. He doesn't sculpt anything. He leaves this life that was very creative. And this moment for me is one of the most creative moments. I love the fact that he did that.
Yeah, he did. And he did do it. I am here to correct all the scholars and the debates and work it out. Two Pharisees in the early days saw that in the manuscript and said, we got to take that out. That just doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're proving adultery, and we're
yes.
And so they took it out. And I'm glad that somebody had the wisdom to take a real incident and put it back in scripture. I just thought you ought to know that if you didn't know it.
Yes.
Kathy?
Michael, in the book, when you talk about the hunger for beauty, could you expand on that a little bit? What does that mean when you talk about that?
Well, I think I said one of the things I said is a hunger for beauty is at the same time a hunger for God, because God is beautiful. And it's part of the way we're created. I'm created to be in relationship with him. And part of that hunger is when I respond to a beautiful sunset or, whatever expression of beauty, it shows that I'm really hungry for God. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can talk more later.
Yeah, we'll fill that out. That's called a teaser in the industry. You certainly don't want to miss the rest of the important and salient comments that Michael will have on that particular incident. Hey, by the way, you do have to get this book. It's not what you think, and it'll cause you to think thoughts you haven't thought before. It's called Scribbling in the Sand, Christ and Creativity. Guys, this is very hard work, and we need periodic moments of rest, but we'll come back. Hey, we're glad you're here, and we're hanging out with Michael Card. You can keep up with him at michaelcard.com and follow him on Facebook at Michael Card Music.
Michael, we've been talking about creativity, artistic, and as you've touched on, there's a lot of folks who are like, well, I'm not really creative, I'm not really artistic. They kind of diminish it. Do we have maybe a too narrow of definition of what artistic is? I look at what I do with writing, directing, producing. I'm like, I don't think of myself as an artist. I'm not suffering in a faraway thing. I think of more of like workmanship. I just show up and do work. I guess it's artistic, but I think we have some bad conceptions of what creativity is, and it's not always hung on a wall, right?
Well, before you answer, Michael, I just want to say about Matthew, one of the most creative guys I've ever known, and he's won several awards for his films. So he got your humble disease, and it's quite irritating, frankly.
He just became the poster child for our discussion. That.
Am I illustrating what I'm saying?
Yeah. Thank you for proving my whole point.
You say artist, I think a beret and a little.
I was just going to say that because I was just going to say the beret. I was just going to say that. Yeah. Painting or acting bizarre. One of the things that drives me crazy is how musicians and artists think they have to be dressed weird and act weird, and that's part of it. No, I think some of the most creative people I know are just normal, and they're expressing what God has created them to be. And it's a response. I mean, the programs you make are water that washes people's feet, right? That's what they are. That's the most they can be. I think Jesus washing the disciples' feet was a very creative way of him illustrating the fact that he's a servant, that he had come to serve. He hadn't come to be, the master. He'd come to be a servant. And he tells Peter, if you don't get this, you don't get me. And he makes the point by washing their feet, and I see that as an incredibly creative way to make his point. The way he talks to the woman at the well and keeps pursuing her when she clearly doesn't want to have anything to do with him. That was very creative. And she's running away. I just met a guy who told me everything I ever did. She's so excited after it's all over. And I want to be created that way, in a way that connects with people, even wounded people who don't want to have, be connected with.
That's a fascinating.
Aren't there those that criticize you for being too commercial? Aren't there people who will criticize you for being too commercial? In other words, you want stuff that people actually listen to or read, rather than what's in your heart and the creativity of that.
Yeah. Well, it never ceases to amaze me what I get criticized for doing. I got criticized, and I'm really having trouble shaking this. Somebody criticized me of stealing a song the other day. And they said, well, I can sing the same words to this song of yours, as this other song. And I was so upset. I asked Jeff Taylor, who's one of the greatest musicians alive right now in Nashville. I said, well, I don't even know how to respond to this guy. And he said, well, you can sing the words of Amazing Grace, the House of the Rising Sun. So, kind of.
Or Gilligan's Island theme.
Yeah. We love Jeff and agree with you. He's a delight.
And arguably, well, certainly one of the greatest musicians in the world. He went to LA to record with Bob Dylan.
Oh, really?
He was supposed to spend a day. Dylan liked his playing so much he stayed a week. Yeah.
Wow.
And there's a person who's normal. He'd be a great example. Jeff is the most normal person I've ever known, but he can play any song in any key in any style without thinking. It's scary. I love that guy.
Man, it really is.
I love that guy.
Kathy, you got it?
I just I think as somebody who has never really seen themselves as being particularly creative, and again, like what Matthew was saying, the beret thing, and, somebody that hangs something on the wall or, can seemingly create, beauty out of nothing. I think in my old age, I'm starting to learn a little bit about creativity and the various ways that it manifests itself, and something as what I've always looked at as being fairly insignificant. For instance, myself, just having people in my home and entertaining with a dinner party or a tea party with little girls, and watching them take little sugar cubes and put them in teacups, and experiencing just all of that kind of stuff is really amazing to me, and it's become something that I am so grateful for, because I don't know of anybody else that wants to do that, which is fine because I'm happy to do it. But it's creativity is sometimes such an oxymoron, I think.
We'll have Michael respond to that. And if you can talk her into doing it for you, Michael, she'll bake a cookie for you. And you'll think you died and went to heaven. Hey, listen, the name of this book is Scribbling in the Sand, Christ and Creativity. And it's something you ought to get. It's not hard going. You can sit down and give it 2 or 3 hours, and it could change your life. Hey, we're hanging out with Michael Card, and as always, a fun and laid-back time. We laugh more than we talk, and this has been a great hour and continues to be a great hour. Michael, I heard a story about Rookmacher, and he wrote a lot on art, as you know, and was Dr. Schaefer's teacher on that. And when he would be in class, I'm told, sometimes he would put up a painting of a man sitting in a truck and a painting of Jesus hanging on the cross. And he would ask the students, which of these is Christian? And they would, of course, say the one about the cross. And he would say, not even close. And then he would describe the man in the truck, the beauty of it, the creativity of it, the artistry that went into it, et cetera, et cetera. And he would say, that is Christian art. Wow. Would you respond to that?
Wow. Well, he's clearly being creative, right? It's unexpected, right? He's creating this space because you're thinking, what the heck is this guy talking about? What's his point? And he's being irritating, creating a space and all the things that I associate with Jesus writing in the sand. And who am I to disagree with Rookmacher? But wow, that's a scandalous thing to say.
Well, I think that what he was pointing to was there's good art and there's bad art.
Mm-hmm.
And we sometimes get them confused. And you would agree with that.
Oh, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
And
I would disagree sometimes with what we even call art.
Yeah. I agree with you. Matthew?
Yeah, well, I love how you've kind of reframed what creativity, what art is. I've always thought of the verse where Jesus says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, which I think goes a long way towards speaking of this idea of servanthood is so great. And I had to look it up. I'm not smart, but Konstantin Stanislavski, the Russian actor, theater director.
I think you're smart that you can even pronounce that. Wow.
You're just assuming. Listen, I just bring confidence. I don't bring competence. I just this is it. Stanislavski. He says, love the art in yourself, not yourself in the art, which is obviously a secular kind of view. But the idea of like being a conduit of connecting somebody who's hurting to God's beauty.
Yes.
And you go to the medical stuff because you have a medical history. Doctors don't heal people. They facilitate the way God has created the body to bring it back into alignment. So it's a completely different way of looking at creativity. And maybe it opens ourselves to think of like, maybe I am creative.
Yeah.
Kathy using the gift of hospitality to make people feel loved. And you're like, hey, listen, forget about yourself. You are creative.
It doesn't get better than that.
It's just making that connection between God and need.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Well, again, we go back to the life of Jesus. He's not often seen as an artist. He doesn't paint any pictures. He doesn't leave any books. He scribbles in the sand, but we don't know what he said or what he wrote. But what does John say? Through him, everything was created that has been. Nothing was created except it was created through him. So I think there's my case for saying he's our paradigm. And when you look at his life, you see this whole series of him connecting with people and loving people well and offending people, creatively.
Yeah,
which he was really good at.
And that's where art excels, right? Is maybe not creating a treatise, but provoking and getting your attention. So in that sense, he's not like creating like a thing, but the way he communicates is
beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yes.
Creating an opportunity for people to or the challenge for people to think outside what is their norm of thinking, outside their box. I mean, good grief, he tried to do that. And I don't mean that he was unsuccessful because he failed at things, but he tried to do that so many times with the Pharisees.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's Nicodemus. That's the whole discussion about being born again with Nicodemus, who was, I think, fairly sympathetic. But look at that long discussion that Jesus has with him in John. And when it's over, what does he say? How can this be? And this is a smart guy. He's like a Supreme Court. He's on the Sanhedrin. He's a Supreme Court justice. And he has this discussion, and Jesus basically, you really should understand this.
You people, Nick, it's a metaphor.
You really should get this, but you don't. And I just love those. And they're usually in John, these longer, intimate discussions with one other person. That's always the Gospel of John. But I just love seeing the way he does that. And I'm deeply convicted that is still how he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And he engages with us in those same creative ways and shows us who God is and what it means to be, his follower. And And I just find him endlessly fascinating in that sense. Yeah.
You think, and we don't have much more time, but do you think that we've taken what is creative and beautiful and out of the box and challenging and made it religious and boring sometimes?
Yeah.
Modify.
Yeah. It's a good way of shielding or protecting yourself against it, I think, because that's another thing that Jesus does. I mean, he gets under your skin and he undoes you. I mean, I can't think of a good word for it, but he turns everything upside down, radically reverses everything. And that's not what we want, is it?
No.
I want him safely in that Sunday school image, on the wall with the long hair and the, blue eyes and that kind of thing. And gentle Jesus, meek and mild, which is the last thing he is.
It's a little Jewish rabbi. And that's cool. Very quickly, say something to Kathy, who said she wasn't creative, and tell us about your grandmother, but quick.
Well, again, I would just say you draw these young girls in for these. You're talking about it. Oh, it's just a tea party. Well, they will grow up when they're 80 years old. They're going to think back on that moment with you and how it transformed their lives, how there was someone who cared enough about them, when maybe their family didn't. And you may think it's not creative, but you found a way to connect with someone, and that's it. That's it.
Oh, Michael. Who
cares about the Pieta?
I like that. That works. Hey, listen, thanks so much for being with us. The time flew by. It always does when you come.
Well, thanks for all the encouraging things you said. I appreciate it.
I only encourage with truth. Try to remember that. Okay. Because when you're old, you don't care. You say what you think. Guys, we're going to back out, and when we come back, we're going to tell you who we're going to do it unto next week. What a fun hour with Michael Card. He does what he always does, and he does it in his books, and he's been on with us several times. And every time he's there, he causes me to think thoughts I haven't thought, go places that I haven't gone, to look at Jesus in ways that I never looked at him before. And Michael's an amazing man, and one of the most popular musicians in the world, selling millions and millions of albums. And he puts himself down in terms of his writing. But those books, InterVarsity would not have brought this one back as one of their iconic books if he hadn't been used in a great way then. But he has this ability that we all have, in a sense. Even those of us who can't sing, who don't consider ourselves creative. And I'm sitting here with two of the most creative people I know. Kathy is. The stuff she does blows me away. And Matthew is a director of great import and great skill. And you can be any of that in 1,000 ways. In fact, you were created to create. You were created by the creator of the universe to create. And don't let the artists who look down their noses with their peacock feathers flying in the breeze to take that from you. Be different. Find out what you can do and do it and see what he does. Sing loud, even if you don't sing well. Reach out to people, wash people's feet. All of that is a part of the creative process that God has instilled in us. And by being creators in the way that Michael Card is talking about, we can see another awakening take place in our nation. That's a part of the witness we have for the world. Yeah, it sounds like a sermon. I'm sorry. Kathy, who's going to be on next week?
Next week, we're going to be talking with a guy named Trevin Wax. And he, along with a number of other people, wrote a book titled Before You Lose Your Faith, Deconstructing Doubt in the Church. And this book is targeted toward people who obviously have had doubt in the church, and a lot of people who have left and that kind of thing, written by a bunch of different people, all with, different views, etc. But he's one of them, and he was highly recommended to us by a friend of ours. So we're going to talk to him.
That's going to be a great program, and you don't want to miss it. So we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Between now and then, don't do anything we wouldn't. That gives you a wide, wide berth.